Welcome to Ask the Expert on Contingent Workforce Strategies LinkedIn group. And I've got a really cool topic today and a really cool person that I think you may all know, but just in case, I'll do an intro shortly. But the topic today is leadership in the contingent workforce and how to drive engagement in the contingent workforce talent ecosystem. And no one better in the world to talk on this topic with me is Michelle Cox. And Michelle Cox has been in the contingent workforce arena for some time, both in her leadership coaching experience and as a program leader. She's got over 20 years of leadership experience, 12 years coaching executives, which time flies when you're having fun, Michelle. And she was one of the early leaders in the contingent workforce space, running an internally managed program at a very large telecom. So, Michelle, thank you for coming on and talking about leadership in the contingent workforce.
Always my favorite topic, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
So, it's an interesting dynamic because often when you think about the contingent workforce, you often call them non-employees and you use terminology like that, which often in a lot of people's minds equate to non-human, right? You see them on a dashboard, they're a number, they're called spend, but really these people are human and providing leadership is something that is so important, but so often overlooked and just kind of disseminated down without any strategy. So, let's talk about this topic more and really start with the why does this matter?
Yeah, well, I think that's the probably the easiest question to answer. I'm like that why it matters. Well, first of all, like you want engagement. You want that whoever your quote unquote non-employee is, whether they're employee, non-employee, it doesn't really matter if they're part of your team. And I'm careful in my language because I know compliance here. But if they're part of your team, you have expectations that they're going to deliver and certain based upon what the contract says, etc. And if you're not engaging with them, why would they want to deliver outside of yes, I'm getting a paycheck, etc. But are they going to deliver at their highest and best? Are they going to push beyond just saying this is good enough, or because they actually believe in you, they want to follow you, they actually want to engage in the work and they're excited about it? My goodness, the actual outcome is you get higher productivity, you get higher engagement, you get higher return on investment, and you're also starting to set up, oh, would this person want to be part of my team? If there's an opening, would they choose to be part of my team if there's an opening? So I could keep going on about this one, but there's so many whys behind the need for engagement, no matter where they are. Otherwise, you're pitting one against the other.
Yeah, and it's interesting because everybody says, "Oh, I'll get more ROI by treating people like, robots and always just managing them to an outcome and to the contracts." But it's amazing how by treating people like humans, you end up getting that productivity gain. You see it in your full-time workforce, and you see it with your external vendors, your external workforce that are still human beings, right? That are doing work for you.
Absolutely. Like that's the whole piece about it. It's not seeing them as a number. And it's so easy to be like, oh, it's another number on a spreadsheet. Or, and Jeff, you and I joke about this, but it's like spend. And they're not spent. They're a value. They're providing a valuable contribution to your team, to your organization, to the things that you're looking to achieve. And so why wouldn't you treat them as a valuable human that's contributing, just like you would anybody else? If you go to the, sorry, I can go off on a tangent here, but if you go to the grocery store and the checkout person helps you, you still treat them like a human being. And you, because guess what? They're helping you. They're providing a service. And so is your contingent workforce, a non-employee. They're providing you a service, but you can still be courteous and kind and care about their well-being and still know that they're not your employee.
Yeah. Well, and you know, one of the things that we mentioned and we say you're careful with words is that compliance side of things. And there's a lot of myths that come around that. And yes, it's very important not to, treat them like employees in terms of compensation, providing them with, expenses that employees would receive, certain things like that. It is correct to be careful around, but you can have open, honest conversations around that and workarounds, let's call it, that do create that barrier of, hey, you are external to the organization, you are a vendor to the organization, but we value what you're bringing to the table. And we always joke about even the Christmas party stuff too, right? They should, in a lot of cases, come to your Christmas party, but as external vendors, they can look at it as a marketing activity and bring, pay for it, or, bring something that is raffled off or something like that that a vendor would typically do anyways, right? And so, being human and being seen as valued part of the team or external part of the team, I don't know, like how do you balance that?
Well, I think the first question is, and this is your, let's kind of, I'm going to throw it a little bit back at you in this is how do you balance it? It's knowing what is truth and what's myth. And I think that's the biggest thing is that I, I personally, and I know I did this when I was leading my program and I would have contractors and I would, I knew what the expectation, I knew that I wanted to ensure they felt part of the team. I wanted to ensure that they were informed. I wanted to ensure that they knew that if they made a mistake, I was going to coach them on the mistake so they didn't make it again. And I may have or may not have, from a compliance perspective, crossed the line. But I think that there's just an unknown about where the line needs to be drawn and where it doesn't. Like, can they attend team meetings? So they're hearing all of the information that you're giving to the rest of your team. So you're not having to have two different meetings or what have you. Or can you have a coaching conversation with them? Not a corrective action conversation, but a
Yeah.
coaching. I want to teach you. Is that acceptable? And I think that's where it comes down to is knowing what the rules, quote unquote, rules are
Yeah.
and what's gray. So you're able to operate if you need be in the gray.
Yeah. No, and it is an interesting conversation around that. Independence and is important, right? And the ability to choose to attend those meetings and choose to have conversations that are more human. As long as the worker knows that they're an external vendor, it's well documented that they're external, compensation and transactions are as such so that they're not receiving employee-like benefits, etc. For them to attend a team meeting as an external party, you see that all the time with the larger consulting firms because it's information sharing,
Yep.
but it's mutually agreed upon. It's not subordinate type behavior where if you don't attend, you're going to get fired, right? So thinking in those arenas is very important. And like I say, it's a vendor external party relationship. People understand that if they attend meetings, they attend certain things, have conversations, that you exude some leadership knowledge upon them, that's not treating them like an employee. You're not directing them to do things. They're agreeing to be and choosing to be in those moments, which I think is important. So thinking about that, right? And taking a step back and starting to think more strategically about your CW talent or your external talent or your, right? Especially with it being such a large percentage of the workforce these days, how can leaders start to, provide that leadership and vision and things that they should be doing for the organization with the external workforce?
Well, so I think it's based upon what you just said, Jeff, because I think like it's it's not excluding, it's putting them at choice, first of all, to say, yes, I want to be part of this. Yes, I want to have coaching. Yes, I want to have feedback. Yes, I'll attend a one-on-one. Yes, I will attend a team meeting. And then really looking at how do you treat your employees? The likelihood is you treat your employees like, here's the vision for the year. Here are the three, well, okay, my ideal world. Here are the three primary goals and objectives that we're looking to achieve. These are how we're going to measure them. And here's where you in particular are playing, like you're part of the team, you're playing your part for us to achieve that.
Yeah.
And then understanding what are the different roles within the team and ensuring that you're communicating clearly, you're open, you're transparent, you're being leader, whether they're an employee or a non-employee, as long as they're choosing into it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I see it for both employees and external. They're also consumers of the products and services a lot of companies and organizations are providing. So, treating anyone with a disrespect or, non-human aspect hurts your consumer brand.
Very much so. Very much so. And you'll see, like, okay, so let's just be blunt. I've seen some of the worst case scenarios where there's a contingent workforce that was treated terribly. Like, oh, we're just going to push all the work onto them and they can do the work and like all the scut work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the team is all protected instead of really looking at what is the value they can contribute, what's the highest and best value that they're able to contribute, and along with my team, and how does each one of them play a part into it. And so I've seen best and worst case scenarios with how leaders treat non non-employees in that scenario, instead of looking at like, this is a human being, they have a family to feed, they have bills, they have everything that I have in my life, or somewhat. They have family, friends, whatever it looks like. And so I'm going to treat them like I want to be treated.
Yeah, it's something that is often because they're only there for a temporary period of time, right? They're disposable in mindset, right? When you say that. And so, when you take a step back and say, well, wait a second, they're more than a number, they're more than spend, you know, they're human, they are worth investing some time into, right? And not investing like going across that line of co-employment, etc., but investing in them as humans, right? And like you said early on, the benefits and the value of doing that is engagement and productivity. And we're all, in the world today, especially with a bunch of layoffs, we're all strapped for time and there's do more with less mentality. And so how do we squeak out an extra 50% or an extra 10%, 25%, 100% out of the spend that we have on that external worker? Treat them like humans is probably a good answer, right?
100%. And then you can out, like a lot of times I'll ask people, do you think people would choose to follow you?
Yeah.
Would your non-employees or employees for that matter choose to follow you. The likelihood is if your employees say yes and you're treating the contingent because they're human beings and you care about them and you want them to be successful, I'm thinking positive intent, that's what most leaders think. Then if you're treating your non-employees with that same level of respect, that same level of dignity, that same level of care, they're going to want to follow you as well. They're going to choose to follow you, not because they signed a contract saying, I'm going to be on X assignment for the next 12 weeks under this person. It's a choice versus being mandated.
Yeah. And so, the other challenge, of course, is in the world of contingent workforce, there's some layers of relationships as well. So you're in, let's call it the consulting world. There's humans that are working day to day, but they're working for a large consulting house, right? A third party, and they're an employee of that company. Or in other cases, they're working through staffing agencies as well. And so there's this kind of fine line of how do you bring everybody in on the vision and of the company and provide leadership to all of these kind of desperate parties so it flows down as ambassadors of the organization. What are some of the best practices you've seen there, or some of the challenges and worst practices you've seen?
Okay, I love this question because it was one of my biggest things when I became a program leader, when I came into it, was giving my suppliers a playbook. And ensuring they knew how we work. What's the vision of our organizations? What are the values? What are the behaviors? What are the expectations that we have of our employees? And really looking at that high level so they could actually speak to our culture just like somebody internally could speak to our culture. So when they were going out, recruiting, hiring, doing all the pieces on the back end, they had firsthand exposure into knowing what our organization is. So that would be number one. Put together a playbook.
Yeah.
So they know you inside and out. The second thing is that we would do is we would actually have our supplier, we did a supplier summit.
Yeah.
So we would bring our suppliers on site so they could meet with the hiring managers face to face. They could ask questions. They could actually get to know what's truly important, not just on a phone call. And I understand this can be difficult sometimes, but it wasn't like we did it every quarter. We would do it once a year, bring in, have all the suppliers, hiring managers could get to know them, get to know who they are, what they do, what they offer, how they operate as well. And it really started informing that I understand your culture. I see what's on the walls in your building. I see and hear the language that your leadership team is speaking when they're talking with us. And I hear, and we also gave our leaders an opportunity to say, these are our big projects. These are our initiatives for this year. So as you start thinking, and I'm coming out to scope, we gave proactive knowledge and communicate. If you're noticing there's one clear piece, communicate. And please communicate, because if you don't, nobody has expectations. Nobody knows anything about you. So those are two of the best practices that I would say.
Yeah. And did it also play into vendor selection? Also, did you evaluate them for their leadership capabilities and how they treated their people?
Very much so. Very much so. Especially when we were looking at BMS, when we were looking at initially before we decided to go in-house MSP, but even from a staffing supplier perspective, we had calls. We would ask to have calls with different levels within their organization. So we understood how they were treated.
Yeah.
Because we had an assumption, because this also goes for us, it was end-to-end contractor experience. It wasn't just what's the experience when they get on site, because everybody loved us because we were very warm and fuzzy. We were very communicative. We knew who we were as an organization, but we needed that same level within the organization. Do my staffing suppliers care? Are they checking in with the contractor?
Yeah.
Or are they just saying, here you go, you got a contract. I won't talk to you now for the next 6 months or however long you're on contract. How well do they know and can they articulate our everything, our business model, our values, our vision, all of that? How are they able to articulate that to the end contractor? What materials do they provide to them? So we literally went to all layers with it,
Yeah.
but you learn a lot.
Oh, totally. And it's something that you often don't think about, right? Is how important being able to um, filter this through the layers, right? And so, especially if you have lots of work to do and you're using a high percentage of the workforce is external, you know, making sure they're all coordinating and they're running on all cylinders and see the vision, see the goals, understand what you're trying to accomplish without that filtering through the layers, you're not getting the productivity for the or the value for what you are quote unquote spending, right? You could spend
100,
more and get
yep,
less typically if you aren't allowing that to get to the people that are actually doing the work.
100%, 100%. Like I found like recruiters are amazing. Like I don't get me wrong. Love having conversations with the relationship people at any of the supplier side of the house. And at the same token, they're not the ones that are interacting one-on-one with with the actual contractor necessarily. In some scenarios, yes, but in some, no. But the ones that are actually interacting, you can see what the recruiter, if the recruiter understands as well. I didn't care if we had to have calls with 50 people within your organization and teach so you could truly understand like what we needed.
Yeah.
I would do it.
Yeah. And
You have to
it's
invest.
often overlooked and it's seen as, oh, that's a lot of work to do, and a lot of people aren't equipped to have those personal conversations that get past the quick, hey, thou shalt do stuff for me because I'm your boss and I'm paying you as an external worker, right? Taking a step back and actually treating them like humans and communicating to them like they're part of your team, that respect goes such a long way.
That word right there, respect, is like it's huge. Like it's a matter of having the respect for the person, not just the thing they're doing for you, but for who they are.
Did you find it changed though as the level of talent changed as well? So let's say you are bringing in the management consultant for the executive side of things. Were they more, were they communicated to more, communicated differently than other areas? Or like, and once again, they're temporary, they're coming in and out, and they probably don't need the hand holding as much. Was it often different, or how did it work?
I think it's different because you typically are seeing the same people over and over and over again. And you typically have the same fundamental team that's leading. So they become an intimate part of your organization. You typically, at least from my perspective,
Yeah.
if you're bringing in the Deloittes or any of the big McKinseys or any of the big names into your organization, they're typically not on a quick one and done project. They're on a project that's lasting a year, potentially 2 years, etc. And so you start seeing them and they literally become part of your organization. I probably shouldn't say that to the
No.
compliance guy, but they do. They become part of it. So they inherently get exposure and they know it. Whereas staffing suppliers at the leadership level don't always have that same level of exposure because they're not in it for necessarily that length of time. They're not sitting there going through an RFP process where you're meeting with people and you're spend 20 hours with them before you can get awarded the contract.
Yeah.
So I think there's just a different level of intimacy that you gain from being a management consultant than you do from a
Yeah.
traditional either IC or staffing supplier world.
Yeah. And I always now say we're 5 years out of COVID, right? Remote work is still here to stay. Um, but is it, has things changed? Are they starting to drift back to the traditional methods that were in the past, like getting people together? Um, or has it just changed for good? And what are some practices to help with and we'll go back to the key word, communicate with your external workers, right? And workforce, even in this distributed world that we live in.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that is because I do believe that we are going to continue to have remote work, and that's going to continue to be out there. And I do think that some organizations are pulling it back in, or right for whether it's right or wrong or whatever it may be, they're bringing it back. I'm like, I mean, I may have an opinion on it, but I think that I always look at hybrid work or remote work. If you would walk up to somebody in an office, then pick up the phone and call them in a remote environment. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It is identical. If you would, I am somebody, then I am them, or text message them. It's the same thing. So communicate just like you would in some fashion as if you were in the office.
Yeah.
And I feel like nowadays with hybrid or remote, people are like, oh, I have to schedule this. I'm like, why? Why do you have to schedule every single piece? You can just pick up the phone and call and
Yeah.
say, how are you today? Just want to check in. Do you need anything from me?
Yeah. And I think there's a lost um, kind of that spontaneous communication, or because you have to think, is it important enough to schedule something, right? Versus if they were 2 cubes down from you, right? Office is down, you just walk by and ask the question, or you'd make the funny comment you were thinking about to them, right? And build that camaraderie and engagement, right? With your team members.
Yeah. So it's just like keeping some of that spontaneous like interaction and not making it so structured and so that, okay, I can't do it unless I put 15 minutes on their calendar. Oh, pick the phone. Like communicate, right? And communicate more. This is the last piece is I feel like in hybrid or remote work, there seems to be that's probably one of the biggest challenges I see is that people don't communicate enough. They're like, oh, I have a team meeting on Monday, and then I don't talk to anybody until next Monday. And we're all in meetings, we're doing what have you, but there's no other interaction per se throughout the week. And that is a gap.
Yeah,
In a hybrid or remote, you almost need to communicate more.
100%. And not always just about the task at hand.
Yeah, just human to what we keep saying. It's, hey, how are you? I just want to check in, see if you need anything.
Yeah, 100%. So, our audience is both in the staffing and the contingent realm, the tech providers, but also the leadership at the providers and vendors level, but also program leaders that often have to deal transactionally and want to be more, call it strategic and visionary, but they tend to, they may, get caught in this transactional side of things, and not be as, strategic and help with communicating out the leadership visions. How do you work both internally and then to get to the leadership level to say, listen, a third of your workforce or 50% of your workforce needs to be a part of the company vision and needs to hear from the leadership of this organization so that we're going to get way more productivity out of the $250 million we just spent on external workforce. How do you communicate that in-house so that your leadership takes this seriously and then will participate in communicating that vision out to this huge part of the workforce? And then once you get it, I think we've talked about getting it out to the different layers is important. But how do you manage that internal struggle often?
Yeah. So first of all, it's enrollment. Like there has to be something in it for them to want to do something different. But you have to be able to clearly articulate like what's in it for them, what's in it for the organization, what's in it for the team, what's in it, what do you get out of doing something different. It's almost like building a business case and going through and saying what's the ROI in doing this, not just for me but for the organization, for everybody involved in it. Because if you can put, let's, what do people care about? They care about dollars and cents,
Yeah.
time and money. Those are the two biggest things that people care the most about. You can equate it back to time and money, or either or, and then all of a sudden it becomes, oh, this becomes more urgent. This becomes something we need to do within our organization because it's going to save us time. Saving us time equates to saving us money.
It does ring a bell, especially at executive levels, because they're often just seeing reports and they see numbers and they want to act on those and help with
Exactly.
that. There's the
So put it,
touchy-feely side of it, but it's the hard numbers that they often will look at.
that's what people, I mean, at the executive level, it's not necessarily warm and fuzzy feelings because if you go to them saying, I think we should communicate more because you know what? It'll make people feel like they have a cleaner understanding of what we do, why we do it. Well, so what? If you can answer a so what to why someone should care, why it matters, you can enroll people.
100%. And especially with the numbers that are running through contingent programs these days, both numbers of heads, but the number of dollars that run through these programs, you can say, hey, if we can move the needle by 2% because we were treated them more like humans, that equates to $4 million. Can you give me 20 minutes on a we'll call it a vendor summit, and we'll have all the workers call in if they want to, right?
That's what I'm talking about. Like, that's where all of a sudden you're like, I can say that. And people are like, yes, please go.
Amazing. We've come to the end of the show, right? And I know I had a couple of other questions that I'm going to save for our next session because we got to do this more often, Michelle. It's incredible, and we always are able to talk for hours. So I'll save those questions for the next go round. So, to wrap it up, I always, say, what are some of the kind of what can I do as I'm thinking about this topic? What can I do, right? Do tomorrow to start down this path of helping create more engagement within my contingent workforce and really show leadership to the external workforce that is such an important part of most organizations. So, what are some of the early wins or next steps people should think about?
I always say the first thing is be intentional with it. Like, don't, because I feel like that's one of our biggest misses that we're not intentional with thinking about, oh, I need to actively engage. Because if you're not doing it today, then you need to build the muscle in order to do it. So, first thing, be intentional. Second thing, take one action every single day. Shows that, guess what? They're human beings and you're going to care about them and you trust them and you're going to engage with them. You're going to communicate. You're going to be open and honest, transparent. Start taking the action every day to do it and start building your muscle and then start looking at what's the ROI of it? What am I seeing that's different than I didn't see before? Then you can start having a much broader conversation.
Yeah. Is there ways to measure this?
I mean, you can measure it. There's multiple ways. So if you attrition, you have contractors that choose to quit and go to another organization in time that if they're they're putting in that little extra effort because you can see it. Oh, Johnny worked an extra hour. He's not getting paid for that extra hour, but
Yeah.
he did it
But
because he
the
wanted.
but the timesheet didn't have the extra hour on it. Yeah.
Yes, because he wanted to do this and he wanted to contribute. That you can start taking little nuggets and measuring. How long are they referring people in? Are they wanting to become part of your team? Are they coming back? That's a big one that you can
Mm,
measure. Are they putting their hand up saying, if you ever have another opening, please bring me back. This is a team I want to be.
amazing. A great conversation, Michelle. Thank you so much for your time to
Thank you.
you've taken talking to us on this. And I know there in the back of my head, I've a number of other questions that I'll save for another day. So thanks again.